A disappointing season for Wake Forest in 2023 after this really had become one of the more consistent programs in the ACC. Dave Clawson has done an excellent job at Wake Forest, but again, a very disappointing season last year. Before we get to the game-by-game predictions, let's just kind of go through some thoughts on this team. Can they turn it around? That's going to be the big question mark. They're really known for offense. Dave Clawson's offenses have always been really good, and last year they really weren't. This offense was not good at all. They bring in Hank Bachmeier, transfer quarterback, who's had his ups and downs, but he's a veteran, and I think he'll do pretty well in this offense. Some pretty good weapons around him at running back and wide receiver. I even think the offensive line is going to be pretty strong. I think Wake Forest offensively is going to make a big jump. They're going to turn things around this year. And then the defense, it was kind of average last year. They bring some pieces back on that defensive line, which should be really good. Everywhere else, maybe some question marks. I should think the defensive line is probably going to be the strength of this team. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back. I think they will bounce back. Vegas, they've got the over-under at just 4.5, so they're not expecting much from Wake Forest. Maybe a 4-8, 5-7 type season. They should win the first game, no problem. North Carolina A&T. I got that as a win. Then Virginia up next on September 7th. At home, this should be a pretty good game. I think it's a pretty even matchup. Both of these teams are kind of in that bottom group in the ACC. I think Wake Forest, though, are going to be ready to go. I've got them winning this one and getting to 2-0. Not so much against Ole Miss. That's going to be tough. I think they lose that game. Probably not all that competitive. Louisiana up next at home. Should be a pretty good, hard-fought win for Wake Forest. So I think they win that game. They're 3-1. And then it's on the road at NC State. NC State's going to be pretty solid this season. That's going to be a really tough matchup. I think NC State too much. Got to go with the Wolfpack here in this one. And then you've got Clemson at home. Could they potentially pull off a big upset here? I think it's going to be tough going up against that Clemson defense. Again, Wake Forest, I think they'll be better offensively this year, but I don't think they're going to have the type of offense that can go out there and really score on a great defense like Clemson. So I don't see them winning that game. 3-3 record. Then it's on the road at UConn. Could be a tricky game here. UConn they've been getting better, and so this is going to be a pretty tough matchup here on the road at UConn. I was really kind of back and forth on this game, but I think Wake Forest is going to get it done. I've got them winning this game. I usually favor the Power 5 teams or the Power 4 teams in these matchups, but again, this was a tough one. I'm going to go Wake Forest. Then you've got Stanford the next week on the road. Got to go all the way. They travel up to UConn, then all the way out west to Stanford. That's a lot of travel against a Stanford team that is going to be pretty similar to Wake Forest. I don't think they're going to be very good. But I think that travel could be the difference. The home field advantage favoring Stanford, although it's not necessarily a super loud crowd. But just playing at home is still an advantage. I've got Stanford getting the win there. Then they come back home. How crazy is this? You go to Stanford, then you come back home. They will have a bye week before this game. It's a Friday night game. But you go to Stanford, then you come back home and play another team from California. They'll play Cal at home. The extra time to rest should be good for them here. I think they're probably, Cal's going to have a pretty good offense. It's going to be a good matchup. If the Wake Forest defensive line can create some big plays in the backfield, some sacks, some quarterback pressures, tackles for loss, things like that against a really good running back, Jaden Knott. That's going to be a tough one, but I think that Wake Forest defensive line will show out in this game. Their offense will do enough to get a win in a pretty high-scoring game. So that puts them at 5-4. Then you've got at North Carolina. It's going to be a tough one here. North Carolina going to be pretty good on both sides of the ball. Just from a talent perspective, North Carolina is way ahead of Wake Forest. At home, got to go North Carolina here in this one. And then Miami, kind of the same story, just way more talent than Wake Forest, plus they're playing at home. Don't really see this one being all that competitive. Then you got Duke to close things out. A chance to get to a bowl game. This will be a huge game, a huge opportunity for Wake Forest. And I think they're maybe a little bit better than Duke this year. When I look at these two rosters and what they've got coming back, I think Wake Forest is a little bit better. And I think playing at home, that'll be enough to get them the win. They beat Duke. They get to a bowl game. Yes, I am predicting Wake Forest to bounce back and get to a bowl game. They could beat Stanford. You look at that game. That could maybe get them to 7-5. I was looking at that one. But then, again, you could lose some of these games I've got to win. You could lose at UConn. Could lose to Virginia. Could lose to Cal or Duke. So 6-6, I think, should be the goal. I think they get there. I think they get to that bowl game. and it's a much better season for Wake Forest this year. Do you guys agree or disagree? Give me your predictions for Wake Forest down in the comments below.